Hey guys, it's your boy Nico here from the Small Axe Podcast. I want to show you how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire. You see, not everybody begins their investing career with millions of dollars, a huge network of investors, or the knowledge necessary to become successful in this space, and that's okay. What I focus on here on this podcast is helping you hone your skills, sharpen your tools to become the best investor that you can be. Now, I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy this show. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to me or the guest, feel free to do so. Love you guys. All right, Small Axe people, Small Axe community, it's me, Nico, and today you're going to hear a conversation between me and my buddy Robert Musso. I reached out to him. Well, obviously, I've been trying to get him on the podcast for a while, Robert. Sorry, we haven't done it, but I
No
reached
worries.
out to him. I reached out to him recently for a specific question on student housing because I know that's part of what he does. He does a lot. And before I jump into that conversation, though, I'm going to bring him on. Robert, how's it going?
I'm good, my friend. Thanks so much for having me on. Yes, it has been a while, so I'm glad we finally were able to hook up.
Me too, man. I'm excited. And before we jump into this conversation, I want you to just kind of share a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it short and to the point, but I've been in real estate a very long time, over 20 years, but I started in a corporate career right out of college. Um, and I was in the hotel and hospitality industry, food and beverage, hotels, hospitality, representing renowned hotels all over the country, all over the world. As I was in corporate America, even with those high octane roles and traveling all over, I was always in a real estate state of mind, so to speak, where I lived in New York City. And I was investing in real estate here and there during my W-2 job. At one point, 11 years ago, I had enough under my belt where I said, you know what? Let me take a risk. Let me go for the goals that I've been dreaming about for quite some time. And I decided to leave corporate America about 11 years ago after a long career. And now I'm a full-time real estate professional, live in New Jersey with my wife and two sons. I have a multitude of real estate in several different states, predominantly Pennsylvania, but some in the Carolinas as well. And I'm heavily weighted in the multifamily arena. But to your point earlier, Nico, I do have some other asset classes that I've been, working over the last X amount of years, such as student housing and industrial flex space. But it's 7 days a week, real estate full time, and my true passions, is using real estate as the bridge to living your best life. And for me, as you know, my friend, it's spending time with my family, cooking, traveling, and just being passionate about everything in life. And real estate really is that foundation and bridge that is plateaued to the point where I can enjoy those things now. So,
Oh, cool, man. Robert, what is your like? Because I watch your videos all the time on TikTok and Instagram. Like, how could people find you? Because you do post some really fun stuff. It's not just multifamily or investing. It's investing, traveling, and food, right? And dining. And I love
yes.
it. How can
Well,
people
I'm
find you?
hoping in the next month, I'm finally going to put together myself and my business partner Marco Barbaro. We're working on a food platform called Foodie Nation Family, and I'm implementing it with my philosophy of invest, travel, and dine. So we're working on a website right now. We're working, on TikTok and Instagram platform. But where you could find me right now for most of my real estate is on Tucson, Tuson properties.com. And the Tucson is not Tucson, Arizona. It's basically just me, two sons. I have two sons and I'm doing this for my children. So Tuson properties.com.
Yeah, so cool. I want to get into our conversation, but before that, I need to, kind of lay the foundation for the listeners here. Was it scary, nerve-wracking? I mean, you have a family and you went 11 years ago, you went kind of rogue on us. How was that? And does your wife work to kind of support and help out?
Yeah, my wife is a school teacher in Brooklyn, New York, and I had only one child at that point. I was, climbing the corporate ladder. Everything was going really well, but I knew deep in my DNA and my heart, that as my mom was an immigrant, my grandparents are immigrants, they all opened up their own businesses. They really controlled their own destination in life with running their own businesses. So I just had it in me to try to break away from the corporate mold. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever, but I just had it inside of my bones and my heart. And so I just told my wife one day, I said, listen, with your support, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to give it 1 year. I put together a very strategic business plan. We had some cash flow coming in. She was working as a school teacher, had one small child at the time. And I said, let me give it a year. So I put together a pretty rigorous, 12 to 18-month action plan and gave it a shot. And I started picking up some more properties, refinancing, and making a couple of other moves to kind of set up my future. And 11 years later, my only regret is that I wish I did it sooner, right? And I'm never looking back at this point. So that's kind of how it all started for me. But I understand we could all be at different levels. You could be 10 years, older than me. You could be in your early 20s. Life is unpredictable, life is short, everybody's circumstances are different. So, there's no blueprint and there's no mold. It's what works for you and what works for your journey. But definitely it's scary, but you got to challenge yourself, invest in yourself, believe in yourself, and have the right support around you. And I think anything is possible in this country, especially. So
I love it, Robert. Thank you. Thank you for the inspiration. Hanging out with you is a relief, and I truly appreciate it. So let's jump into this for our listeners.
yeah.
So here's my situation. I went direct to seller with a few guys in our network, and we found a guy, an owner who's willing to potentially sell one of his properties. It is a student housing property. It's not listed. It is a brand new build in a phenomenal area of Tampa, where right next to the University of Tampa, high median income area, and the students that go there are typically fairly well off. They drive nice cars and things like that. So I'm underwriting this, and I'm done. Obviously, I always do an underwriting, get it done within 24 hours, and I respond to the owner. But I'm hesitant here because it's not what I know. I don't know student housing. What nuances, like what things should I be considering or thinking about when I'm analyzing a student housing opportunity, maybe in comparison to a multifamily opportunity?
Yeah. I mean, real estate is the umbrella. Underneath the umbrella, there's all these different asset classes, right? It's kind of like playing baseball, different positions. You're still an all-star athlete, but what positions do you really want to get good at? I've been in student housing for a long time. Nothing crazy, major. Um, you know, I don't have thousands of units or whatnot, but I've been involved in student housing in several different states over the last 15 years, and I truly do like it. So there's a lot to discuss, but just to kind of hyphenate some things, nationally, anybody could look at national student housing reports by looking at stuff like Yardi, for example. I follow Yardi national reports on everything, whether it's storage facilities, whether it's multifamily, or whether it's student housing. So, broad stroke, student housing, is still in pretty good shape. I believe I recently just read that there's going to be, I think I read the last report I read was in May 2024. Pre-leasing matched May of 2023, which means that we're on pace to have a pretty decent year nationally in student housing for 2024. Basically, average rents across the whole nation per bed. That's another thing. Residential real estate rentals are per unit when student housing is per bed. So if you have a 3 bedroom, you might be able to rent it out for 1,500 in a strong market for residential, but you might be able to get $500 to $900 per bed for student housing. So that naturally drives up, revenue and potentially net operating income, and depending on the area, the location and cap rates, your value. So with that being said, um, I think some of the nuances with student housing is it's a different animal. And you have to be very, very well aware of what you're in for. If you're dealing with students, there's obviously going to be a lot of turnover on an annual basis. So most leases are probably going to be a year, maybe 2 years if you get juniors who are coming, sophomores who are coming in as juniors, and they might stay another year as a senior if they like your residency or whatnot. So, but most of your leases are only going to be 1 or 2 years. You're gonna have to deal with the students. I mean, these are younger adults who have never lived on their own in most cases. There's naturally going to be some wear and tear. There's naturally going to be some dependency on little things, from changing light bulbs to little things that maybe, more experienced residents might just take care of on their own and not bother you. And with the turnover process, you're going to have to compensate for additional wear and tear. But again, that price per bed could get you an exponential amount of revenue on an annual basis, and help you out with cash flow and value and make your asset extremely valuable if you manage it right.
Yeah, awesome, Robert. Now, what about like insurance? Is it similar? I'm actually speaking to a broker right now. I got a partial answer to my question, and he will follow up later today. But is there anything different than multifamily for insurance? I think he mentioned something about the liability being higher.
Excellent question. And it's on my list. I probably have about a list of 25 things to consider here. I put together a list a long time ago, and I commonly share this with people. I put it into my strategic action plans with my own asset management groups and whatnot. But very, very good question. Insurance, especially today, has changed in so many different ways. Insurance providers are making it very difficult across the board, no matter what asset class you have, to retain good insurance. So, student housing is a red flag for a lot of insurance companies. So you have to be very, very careful. If you have a student housing facility, there are some insurance providers out there right now who will not insure your property. And if they do, they could be at much, much higher rates. Um, I recently went through a situation where I have a 32 bedroom student housing facility. I usually on an annual basis, I try to compare insurance providers to make sure I'm getting the best insurance plan necessary. And I had a situation where I was forced to get new insurance because the current insurance provider, even though everything was going smooth, they dropped the policy. They said that their underwriters are no longer, keeping policies for student housing. So I had to find a new provider, and that was a difficult challenge in itself. But I did find two that came and inspected the property. They saw my track record. They saw the track record of the property. We were at 100% occupancy, so on and so forth. But I will tell you, my premium went up 18%. Um, but it was very, very nerve-wracking. So excellent question, Nico. And everybody needs to compensate. That directly ties into your underwriting. So let's say right now you are given income and expenses by a current owner and you're purchasing a property, and let's just say for round numbers, $10,000 insurance policy. Don't just assume that it's going to be $10,000 in your assumptions. Do a little bit more due diligence on that insurance because it could go up. It could go up exponentially. It could go up slightly. So I would just play it safe and stress test your underwriting and be conservative and make sure you're compensating for a worst case scenario with the insurance. A lot of times, I'll just, in a very early fashion, I'll ask the broker or the seller to provide me with insurance information. Then I'll do my own homework and call that exact provider and say, if I was to purchase this property, would I still be able to retain the policy? And if so, what would the premium be? You start with that. And if they give you a hard time, then you got to do your due diligence. But don't assume that it's going to be a smooth transition because it's a difficult time right now in the insurance world.
Yeah, great advice, Robert. Thank you. And you mentioned also, so that's one solid expense. I mean, taxes, you're going to go to the assessor, you're going to go to the county, you're going to figure that out,
Mhm.
what they will be reassessed as. And then so you mentioned, turnover. These things have to be furnished, I'm assuming. And if so, how do you factor that in for a cost?
Yeah, I get very fixated, and this is just me with the experience over the years. I get fixated on exit strategies, right? So another key piece of advice that I would give out is, yes, if you have a property at the University of Tampa, Arizona State University, FSU, whatever the case may be, it's most likely going to be student housing for a long time because those are anchor schools and the local municipalities, the cities are fueled by these properties. For example, I have quite a bunch of properties at the University of South Carolina, right? 30,000 plus students. The University of South Carolina is the city of Columbia. So most likely that university is going nowhere for years to come. But if you're investing in a school, less than 10,000 people, or it's more of a local college, and I have a couple of those, you got to be very, very careful with a lot of different KPIs and factors. But I have some properties that are completely furnished, and it's a big thing. College students want easy, easy, easy. They want, 800 a bed, all utilities included, free Wi-Fi, furnished. That's most students. That's not across the board, because I do have student housing that has no furnish units. But most of the students, I'm very successful in a couple of properties in South Carolina that have fully furnished, ready to go properties. And when I was in college, in the early 90s, these places were not very appealing. Most students now, treat these properties like hotels and luxury apartments, and mom and dad are paying for it. And so the expectations are very high today. So things like amenities, such as, yeah, the obvious ones, the Wi-Fi, furnishing, but also they're looking for weight rooms and gyms and volleyball courts, and, and all the nice other bells and whistles that you'll see, because there's a lot of competition out there that has that for students. So it's not just about rate, or rental pricing. They're also looking for amenities.
Yeah, this one has like a study hall in each. So like there are, I guess, only 6 units, but there are two of the units have four beds per unit, and then the other four have 6 beds per unit. And in each one of those 6 units, there's a study hall with like a few different, like it looks like study areas, like cubbies or something. I guess so I guess that's an amenity too. But a weight room would be cool. Would have been cooler for me when I was looking back in the day.
I know, right? Seriously. But like some quick underwriting tips, make sure, and a lot of people ask me to help them with their underwriting, and and proof it and check it. And I frequently see so many missing elements. So when the deal is presented to me to assist for review, it looks like a decent deal. But then when I stress it and say, you're missing this, you're missing this. If I was you, I would add this expense to so on and so forth. The deal doesn't look so good. And this is the problem of what a lot of people have gotten themselves into over the last 4 or 5 years. They're forcing deals with inaccurate underwriting in several different retrospects. And then a year or two down the line, why isn't the property cash flowing? I don't have enough equity to refinance, so on and so forth. So, underwriting tips, for example, make sure you really know your turnover costs. I mean, if you're expecting to turn over 60 to 70% of your inventory every single year, because that's just the natural progression that's just the natural nature of the beast with student housing. Are you factoring in when that tenant leaves? Yes, they have a security deposit, but there might be just some normal turnover fees that are above and beyond the normal wear and tear that you have to do regardless. Are you factoring in turnover costs on an annual basis? Are you factoring, you can't believe, Nico, how many times I see this missing in underwriting: commission, right? So you have to pay someone commission, unless you're renting the properties yourself, or, or even if you're self-managing, you're paying somebody to continuously turn over. It's a big job. And it's not like residential where, Mrs. Smith moves out on June 1st, and 45 days later you're going to find a residential tenant. I mean, you're marketing stuff a year in advance. In some cases, I rent apartments almost 18 months in advance, some 6 months in advance, some 3 months in advance. It just depends. But make sure you're factoring in turnover costs, commissions, price per bed, obviously, versus price per unit. Make sure you understand cap rates in that particular community really well, for your refinancing and for your exit.
Are cap rates similar, like comparable to multifamily, or are they different?
Yeah, it's similar. And if you have any resources, like I have full access to CoStar, But if you don't have full access to CoStar, there's obviously many different resources. Ask your broker to pull some comps, ask your broker to help you out with cap rates, do your own research on various sites. But yeah, really, speak to your lender. Lender's a great resource. It's, someone I commonly go to. I almost consider one of the lenders I work with all the time almost like my CFO. I go to him for tons of advice, and I say, "What are you seeing in the marketplace right now? What are you seeing as far as term sheets? What are you seeing as far as cap rates and student housing? What's the word on the street with student housing in this market and that market? Like, use your resources, right? Who, not how. So who do you know that can even help you get data analytics for student housing is extremely important. So make sure you really know your stuff. And what I've been doing a lot lately too is just, budgeting for CapEx year one. Then I'm budgeting for CapEx in a year three, and I'm budgeting for CapEx in a year 5 or 7 if I'm planning on holding the asset, because a lot of times you're just budgeting for immediate CapEx and you forget 3 years of wear and tear and 7 years from year wear and tear might need another capital call, and you don't want to go back to your investors or out of your pocket. Try to budget it up front. That's my hotel mind also working on how we used to manage renovations and budgets, multi-million dollar budgets, multi-million dollar renovations, and it trickles down to even some of the smaller assets. Just make sure you're budgeting correctly and allocating those dollars smart.
Oh, Robert, that's huge. I got to wrap it up soon. I have a couple of quick hitting questions, if you
Yeah.
wouldn't mind. So let's say you were furnishing. What do you furnish with?
As far as like actual pieces of furniture per se.
Yeah, like how detailed of furniture are you putting in these units?
Yeah, I just finalized a townhouse I have for student housing. For it was 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. So we're putting in basic stuff: dining room table, couch, right? Bedroom. Uh, you know, we're putting an area for bed. Uh, we're putting in mattresses. End tables, drawers, dressers, things like that. The basic stuff, nothing too crazy. A lot of students will bring in their own furniture in addition, but just the basics that you would say. I mean, I would always say like when you go to a hotel, right? You got your bed, you got your dresser, you have a little couch, you have a little coffee table, you have a little business desk, things like that. Nothing too out of the ordinary, just the basic essentials.
How often would you switch those out?
Uh, Another great question. Obviously, if anything's damaged, and was in good working condition when that tenant moved in, that'll be on the tenant and they'll pay for it. So you're moving stuff out based on damage and anything outside of normal wear and tear, if caused by the tenant. But 3 to 4 years, your furniture should last at least. I mean,
Perfect.
if you're turning furniture over every year or two, something's not right. So, I would budget every 3 or 4 years, and that's what I was trying to say with the capital. Like year one, year 3 or 4, and then year 7 or 8. But yeah, that furniture should be lasting you at least a good 3 or 4 years, if not much longer. I mean, I've had some furniture in some of my units for 7, 8 years, and it still is in really good shape. It's going to depend on a few different factors, but rule of thumb, everything's always rule of thumb.
Awesome, Robert. Man, I want to talk all day. I can't, and I gotta go. But let me do two things. I'm gonna ask my final question, and then I'm gonna get the listeners some form of reaching out to you, whether that be your email or your website or whatever, like the two summary.
Sure.
Again. All right, here we go. Let's imagine it was 100 years from now. You now have great great grandchildren, and they wanted to write a book about great great grandpa Robert. What would you want them to title this book?
Um, my if it was my great great grandchildren, I hope that the game of telephone between my children and their children going trickling down, if they were looking, in the past about me, I really want them to just, know that, everything I did was for my family. So the title of the book would be something like, and I don't know, am I grandpa at that point or whatever, but let's just, for the sake of for the sake of argument, grandpa's passionate journey and life about investing, traveling, and dining. And that's just it. And that has so many different tentacles and spider webs, of course. But I honestly, I'm a humble, simple guy who loves my family and faith first, and everything comes after. And that foundation of family and faith, it'll trickle down to anything. So love your family, love your neighbor, love what you do in life, be very, very passionate, and you'll build good relationships and you'll be able to conquer everything. But I really, really stress, that, all the business comes second to faith in my family. And that's what I want to trickle down, those values and morals and ethics to all my kids, and then to their kids, and so on and so forth.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Robert. And thank you for this conversation. You and I will obviously continue to talk. How can the listeners find you?
You can find me on my website again at TUSONproperties.com. And I could also be reached on email at robert.musso, MUSSO, at TucsonProperties.com. And 7 days a week real estate. Happy to talk to you guys about anything whatsoever. I'm a KP, LP, GP on several different asset classes in several different states. Real estate is the bridge to living your best life. Go out there and get it.
I love it. Thanks, Robert. You're the best.
Talk to you soon, buddy. Well, to be continued on the conversation about student housing as well.
Cool. Thanks,
man. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Hey, Small Axe community. I would like to say thank you for listening to another episode of my podcast where we show you how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire. Now, if you liked what you heard, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. Also, if you want to get in touch with me, go to my website at smalaxecommunities.com. Book a call with me. And until the next episode, keep sharpening those axes.